Yeah, I can see it. Oh, I got my yeah, it's the I've been waiting for it's the email from my degree. Basically, I was waiting for it. I think I'm now. So,
Okay, so we start the last session of the first day with Professor Angelo Mercado, Form in Latin and Umbrian Sacral Verse.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Laura Massetti and Copenhagen colleagues for giving us a platform to share work that goes beyond purely linguistic comparison and reconstruction. What I would like to share with you this afternoon are fruits of a research program that I inaugurated as a graduate student in reaffirming before you my credo that Italic carmina are metrical, in contradistinction to prose. I confirm Calvert Watkins's own conviction regarding Italic strophic form. The central idea has to do with metrical responsion. Consider handout 2, a strophe and antistrophe from Aeschylus's Agamemnon. The great tragedian of 6th and 5th century Athens is able, 1, to constitute a highly complex stanzaic rhythmic pattern, and 2, to replicate it from one strophe to another. What might such responsion look like in Italic? I pursue the hypothesis that Italic meter was accentual, and the patterns of responsion I will point out are constituted by the ordering of stress counts in 2 or more strophes. Now, why count stresses? It has been noticed that regardless of the metrical system of a language's literary poetry, the rhythm of children's and folk verse can be based on counting stresses, specifically in 4s. Such 4-beat verse, so-called, is time and again found the world over. It thus makes a good candidate system for trying to capture the rhythm or rhythms of Italic ritual utterances. As far as Italic stress systems go, I assume penultimate stress in Latin and initial in Umbrian. Long enough words in either language likely had quantity-sensitive weaker stress on another syllable. In Latin, I posit that secondary stress was on the 2nd or 3rd syllable to the left of the main stress. In Umbrian, it was post-post-tonic and non-final. Count-based metrical description grants us dispensation from greater phonological specificity than this, the accentuations in my transcriptions notwithstanding. Putative verse boundaries are aligned with phrase ends, maximally every 4 stresses. But there being many levels of phrasal constituency, which can determine segmentation into metrical constituents, there is not necessarily a single possible kilometry for a prayer. The choice of one cut over another is informed first by sense and syntax, then the pattern of responsion resulting from it. And such patterns should comprise as many lines as possible. In handout 3, the short prayer de Mars, quoted by Cato, serves as a compact illustration of the whole endeavor. The text can be laid out as 3 pairs of parallel verses in 2 strophes. The second person pronouns here are tonic, having been fronted. Suavit auribus and satisfactum have secondary stresses. The arrangement of stress counts is repeated from strophe alpha to beta. In the prayer to Jupiter in handout 4, quoted by Livy, we can see 2 decrescendoing strophes with 3 responding lines. This time, the configuration of stress counts is partly parallel, partly chiastic, with a 3-4-3 of strophe alpha mirrored by the 3-3-4 of beta. The prayer to Jupiter from Cato in handout 5 shows a similar pattern with the 4-3-4 in alpha transposed to 4-4-3 in beta. In prayers with 3 strophes, the 2 specimens in my sample show a responsion of 2 strophes out of the 3. In handout 6, Romulus prays to Jupiter Feretrius with chiastically responding alpha and beta strophes. Gamma could be described as a nearly complete repetition of the stress count of alpha. In the prayer to Neria, handout 7, put in the mouth of Romulus's wife Hersilia by Gellius, beta and gamma respond, with 3 verses in parallel and the 4th in chiasmus. With handout 8, we start meeting longer prayers. In a 19-line invocation of Jupiter preserved by Livy, the 7 lines of beta respond to 7 of the 8 in gamma, with parallel 4-3-4-3 enclosed by the opening 4-3-3 of beta and the closing 3-3-4 of gamma. In handout 9, 5 lines respond between alpha and gamma, 4 of which have parallel stress counts. Depending on how beta is filled, it could repeat the pattern of alpha. The prayer to Janus in Many Gods Beside in handout 10, it's diagrammed after the page turn, pulls off responsion in 6 verses. For this to work, however, I confess that I must reject an editorially supplied Populi Romani to achieve my 4-beat line 14. The supplement depends on the formulaic occurrence of Populus Romanus at several points in the prayer and elsewhere, but I can justify my rejection by pointing out that the 3 occurrences in Livy of Res Publica Populi Romani and the one time in Cicero omit Quiritium. The pleonastic emendation Re Publica Populi Romani Quiritium would thus be unique in all Latinity, including the inscriptions. In the prayer to Jupiter Stator, handout 11, again from Livy, the 4 strophes can be paired off with a different responsion pattern in each pair. In alpha beta, 4-3-2-3 is inverted to 3-2-3-4, and in gamma delta, 4-4-3-3 and 3-3-4-4 enclose a 3-beat line with a central message of "Here do I for you." The evocatio in handout 12, surviving in Macrobius, consists of 5 strophes with line and stress counts in an omphalos arrangement. The long strophes alpha and epsilon bookend shorter beta and delta, which enclose the 4 lines of gamma. I come now to handout 13, the specimen that seems to be the only one anyone talks about, the prayer to Mars prescribed by Cato for the purification of one's fields. As in the prayer to Jupiter Stator, we can see the text in 5 strophes. Beta and gamma respond in a complex pattern, enclosed by the even more complex alpha and delta. Epsilon is a rearrangement of the pattern in delta. Last of the Latin prayers in my sample is handout 14, a generic prayer in Cato, which can be laid out as 6 short strophes. This one shows 3 pairs in a complex arrangement. The N333 of alpha and delta interlock with chiastically responding beta gamma and epsilon zeta. Now at this point you might be thinking this is some variety of madness. Humans are very good at seeing patterns where there aren't any, and this idea might be the Indo-Europeanist equivalent of biblical numerology and anagrammatology. More importantly, one might well ask, are the prayers not merely rhythmic, but actually metrical in a way that prose is not? If you look at Cato's preface in handout 15, it doesn't take a lot of squinting to make out parallel, chiastic, and interlocking responsion. Here I invoke the notion of saliency, which is integral to the constraint-based analysis by Hayes and McEachern of 4-line strophes of English folk song. Different levels of metrical constituency can be made salient by repetition and variation. In the familiar dactylic hexameter of Greek, the repeated adonian at line end makes the line salient. In the elegiac couplet, the suppression of the 3rd and 6th arses of the even lines brings out distichic structure. The 1st and 2nd octosyllables set off from the 3rd in Gayatri, the dodecasyllable alternating with pairs of octosyllables in Ushni, and under a tristichic analysis of the Sapphic stanza, 3 hagisachoreans prefixed with acephalous iambs and an adonian tacked onto the 3rd all illustrate saliency of tristics, and so on. Let me take you through what that means for an italic specimen in, where is it? If you look at handout 14, in alpha, hearers might perceive the lines 1 and 2 as a unit, a couplet, and then the following 3 and 3 as individual lines. Beta, the 3, 3, and 3 would be perceived as individual lines. In gamma, the 4, 3 would be a couplet, and the 2, 3 would be a couplet. So I looked at the saliency of the substructures below the level of the strophe in the Latin prayers of the study. I count 40 tokens in 29 types. I then constructed a prose corpus. In addition to Cato's preface, I have versified Sallust's Bellum Jugurthinum 1:1 to 3:1, Vitruvius 1.7, the censorial edict of Ahenobarbus and Crassus against the Latin rhetors, and Livy 1.10, 1 to 5. This diverse sample of prose yields 39 strophes of 37 types, which I likewise assess for saliency. The results are given in handout 16 and graphically represented in handout 17. In a log linear model, a statistical test that probes multiple factors that possibly lie behind count data, there are more tokens per strophe type in prayers. In both prayer and prose, salient monostichs are less frequent, but relative to prose, it is less frequent in prayer. Prayers also attest salient tristichs and tetrastichs less strongly than prose. So the differences, therefore, between the two genres are specific and quantifiable, if subtle. Turning to Umbrian, you might think that finding patterns of responsion is like shooting fish in a barrel. What with all the repetition of the Physician Mount, the Igivine state, the name of that, the name of this. I hope to demonstrate to you that patterns of responsion in the ritual utterances preserved by the tablets can be found between strophes that have only some or fewer words in common. In handout 18, the prayer to Presto Tascerfia, repeated twice in tablet 7a, can be described as 2 asymmetrical strophes with 4 chiastically responding lines. The 2, 4, 3, 4 that closes alpha is transposed to 4, 3, 4, 2 to open beta. The famous prayer to Tursa Jovia in handout 19 can likewise be set as 2 asymmetrical strophes. Both end in a run of 3 4-beat lines, preceded by 4 in chiastic responsion. In the short prayer to Vesuvius Sancius in handout 20, 2 symmetrical strophes enclose a shorter third. The responsion is a little messy, with 3-beat line 4 responding to 1-beat line 10 and 2-beat line 15. The longer prayer to Presto Tascerfia in handout 21 shows 7 strophes with complex responsion. Epsilon and eta respond chiastically and enclose the repetition of alpha as zeta. This in turn recapitulates the stress counts of the beginning of beta. The last 4 lines of beta are echoed by the second half of delta. The patterning in the longer prayer to Fisovius Sancius in handout 22 is similar. The mostly responding alpha and epsilon interlock with the beginnings of beta and zeta. These enclose the second half of beta and delta, which surround gamma and the first half of delta. The complex responsion of these inner lines can be seen more clearly in the diagram at the top of handout page 10. As a test, I versified the prose of the ritual instructions in tablets 1A, 1 to 10, and 30 to 34, 1B, 1 to 45, and 6A, 5 to 11, and 15 to 16. The distinction between Umbrian prayer and prose is manifested in a different way than between the genres in Latin. See handout 23. A subset of 13 strophe types in prayer do not occur in prose, and 20 strophe types in prose do not occur in prayer. Only 3 strophe types are common to the 2 genres. Even with the small size of these 2 samples, it is less than 0.1% likely that the complementary distribution is coincidental. To summarize, the Latin and Umbrian prayers of varying lengths that I have just described in survey all show strophes with stress counts responding noun parallel, noun chiasmus. In longer compositions, the strophes can be arranged in interlocking order or en poloy. These are the makings of an aerial feature, if not a metrical isogloss altogether. In future work, hopefully not just by me, these italic structures can be compared with Greek lyric, Avestan, Welsh Cynganedd, and other complex metrical forms, thereby adding metrics to the formulaics and stylistics that Calvert-Watkins convincingly projected back to the dragon-slaying days of Proto-Indo-European. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that delightful, concise, and delightfully concise paper. We have about 14 and a half minutes for questions, should you wish it. Okay, let me ask you a question.
Oh, great.
Hardly. So I have a question about how you decide which words have stresses. So for example, you said in passing, well, if you front a pronoun, then you're going to have it. So for example, in 8, line 16 of 8, you have ut ego hoc porcum. In context, I have no problem understanding ego as having stress.
Mm-hmm.
In 9, line 6, ego vos testor. Again, I have no problem with that. But for example, in 4, Iopater pater fiest fas hunc humam punctilium, quios ego caput teneo. Let's say for the sake of argument that ego there is unstressed, which I have to say in context would be my inclination. Will that change anything, or do you still, I mean, I don't know how do you then, suppose ego is unaccented, how do you deal with a disyllabic word like quios followed by a disyllabic, let's say, unaccented word like ego? Does that change anything? And if you start playing with things like that, is it going to mess things up? Can I just ask also, just the reverse of that has to do with verbs. So take 14, si deo, si dea. Okay, so if this were normal Latin, which it isn't because it's Cato, it would be si deo, si deas or something. Quoium illud sac crest. Okay, I don't know. So you're not accenting those S at all, but how do you know that? So the one, how do you know that it is, and the other, how do you know that it isn't?
That's a very good bundle of questions. In this line of work, it's very hard to keep consistent. So basically with the copulus, if it prodelides in well understood poetry, it'll prodelide for me. I'm personally of the belief that disyllables are always stressed. So ego for me will always have a stress, wherever egos are. The demonstratives with the hikenu particle or a vestige of it, I assume will always be stressed. the syllable before the enclitic will always be stressed. I waver on how the prepositions are treated. I think the monosyllabic prepositions, but the disyllabic ones definitely some form of Greek stress.
But the evidence for ego in quios ego, I mean, somebody like, say, Jim Adams would, I think, take that one as definitely unstressed. He doesn't have to be right, but he has a framework in which it would be. I don't think that this, changes any results dramatically. I'm just pressing you on whether you can explain a little bit more why it would be the case that you've decided that these things always are. Your idea that the verbs are proto-lyted, if that's a word, because I guess it just sounds very weird. But they're proto-lyted because in later poetry they are. I don't know that has to be true, but it's coherent. I'm not sure you have a coherent story behind ego.
So, if it's pronounced, it's already emphatic. So one would have to assume that there's a three-way distinction: no pronounced pronoun, pronounced unstressed pronoun, pronounced stressed pronoun.
Yeah.
For ego. I don't know. Is there data to support that? We don't have essential poetry is the thing, unless you believe me. Then we do. So yeah, I'm not sure I buy that.
I wouldn't be able to defend it. I can only tell you that people much more learned than I have suggested it.
Sanskrit is always pitch accented, right? Aham.
Aham is always pitch.
And ego in Greek. Bo.
Yes. But I think you can't do with ego in Greek what you can supposedly do with ego in Latin. I mean, you can't, I think, in any normal sense in Greek, put ego in what we might call second position in a not very interesting way, whereas you can in fact do this, whether accented or, well, I don't mean it in a Wagner-like way, but that would look extremely odd in Greek, and it's in fact perfectly normal. Anyway, okay.
I'll have to think about that. Thank you.
I think everybody wants to get back on time, which is actually possible.
Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Everybody wants to be the chair when there's a string of Tocarian in the title. The second talk is by Tao Pan. Tocarian be lyakeṃ, yops, āttsāna, warśaiṃne, and Greek pυκινὸν, lόχon plus ιέναι.
So you want to use your PDF?
Yeah, PDF is okay.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
Do you think that I should do I think everyone can see the picture. Can see the screen. Yeah. So yeah. So first of all, thank you very much, and especially many thanks to Laura and also the Institute of Nordic Studies and Linguistics for inviting me and hosting the conference. My talk today is about. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. I will speak louder. Yeah. So my today's talk is about a Tocarian phrase which has a Greek correspondence. Yeah. So this is a Tocarian phrase you can see. Yeah. And this phrase occurs in a Tocarian fragment. And this is actually the image of the fragment. You can see that it's pretty fragmentary. It's only, I mean, the original size should be like from here to here. And then the left side should be here. So it's really fragmentary. So it caused a lot of problems. Yeah. And then this fragment contains actually a story about the Tigris. And the Tigris actually is a the Tigris story of a Buddha legend. And in this Tigris legend, the Buddha or the Bodhisattva sacrifices himself to save the life of a tigress and her two cubs, two children. Yeah. And we find depictions of this story in the wall paintings in Tocharian area. This is from Kizir. You can see that this is the Bodhisattva, the Buddha, and this is the tigress and two cubs. And he falls from the mountain. And then we have another depiction. The tigress is devouring the Buddha and with two cubs, and also two other figures were standing there. And then we have the text edition by Zig and Ziegling of this fragment. And I just want to point out two important things. First, the meter. This belief that the meter is 4 times 12. And then the belief that the fragment, the text, Zweifellos, undoubtedly to the Jatakamala of Ayashula. So this is very popular collection of the Buddha legends. And then this assumption, the identification was also adopted by Melanie Mautsen in 2013. And she followed actually the conclusion of another Indologist, Hanisch. And Hanisch prepared a new edition of the Jatakamala. So they believe that they belong to the Jatakamala by Ayashula. And also this is a translation of Melanie Mautsen. Leaping the obstacles, he entered the thick growth. So this is the background. And now let's turn to the topic. Actually, a friend of mine, she did her dissertation, especially on this tigress story, like many hundred pages. Yeah, because this tigress story was very popular from India and to all the other surrounding areas. Yeah, and we have many versions, not only in China, not only in Sanskrit, but also in Middle Indic and also in Tibetan Chinese, and we have also in Tocharian. So actually, according to her study, the textual details in our fragment are incompatible with those in the Jatakamala. And based on the philological study of the Sanskrit, Khotanese, and Chinese text, the Tocharian tigress story stays closest to the one preserved in Suvana Prabhasottama Sutra. This is a very important Mahayana Buddhist text. And then I'm concentrating on the specific sentence and phrase. So this is the original reading, and you can see that we only starting with the sa. This is the blachmi for sa, and then liu, and then lyakeṃ, and then yopsa, and so on. So this is actually my translation, and I can first show you the parallel text. The Sanskrit one you can read like the princess entered the great Devadasha Vana Gurma forest, so entered into a forest. And then we have the Khotanese version. It also reads like, I will enter upon my own business in that forest full of creepers. And then the Tocharian. So the first problem was caused by the first word, the so-called cesario. So the Tocharian word cesario, I translated as having left behind. And in this sense, this preterite participle could refer to the scene in the story. Namely, the princess servants went off by themselves and dismissed by the princess. Raja Kumarot Sritah. And then we have exactly the Khotanese correspondence. Namely, the young princess, his name is Mahasattva, and standing before the forest and sent off the princesses, and so on. Yeah. So morphologically, we can also analyze this word. It is a participle from the verb ser, arise, and Mautsen gives the meaning as throw down, but she translated in her later article differently as leaping, and probably in order to highlight the possible Indo-European semantics because it is related to the Latin word salire, to leap. And then, but actually inside the Tocharian corpus, the meaning leave behind is indeed justified because we have another occurrence of this verb, shall see. So the Tocharian sentence reads like, it will be possible here to throw off the burden of the 5 skandha. And we have also good Sanskrit and Pali correspondence for this sentence. And then morphologically, specifically for the formation of the cesario, we have other words, like from the root kulip, we have kekalip. From the root perk, we have pepalik. And for the root pearl, we have pepalio. So it is the formation of the participle is quite regular. And then, based on the understanding of this sentence, and we also have an interesting depiction in the Tocharian area. It is in another temple, Sangin. It is also in the Tuofan area. So you can see that these are the 2 princesses or brothers of the. Here you can see the corpse of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva, and these are tigers, and this is a very thick jungle, thick forest. So the 2 princes was dismissed by the Buddha, and Buddha was lying on the ground, and inside the thick forest. And so now comes to a detailed analysis of the Liaquat, because this word caused a lot of problems for the scholars. And Liaquat occurs actually twice. Once here in our fragment, the second time in another fragment, but it is too fragmentary. There's no direct context. And then Mao Tsen mentions this word under the root liak, to lie down, and she deals with it and translates it as obstacle, as you have seen in the article, namely the obstacle for leading a devout life, and namely the attachment to the world, according to the Buddhist teaching. And the connection with the root to lie down actually was already mentioned by Krause. However, in Zeton, the famous Vienna website for compiling all the Tocharian fragments, she gives up her earlier interpretation, saying that, but this reading is very unlikely, in my opinion. A close inspection of the original manuscript on 2017 strongly suggests a reading lyakeṃ. And Adams, editor of the Tocharian dictionary, he proposed another new reading, namely liaquat or liaquat. Now let's come to the fragment. So this is the problematic, the akshara or syllable. And the problem is with this part. Is it really a ka or a ke? So let's compare this akshara with other readings. So you can see that all these are ka in various Tocharian fragments. So this is ka, this is also ka. So here, very important is that you can see that here there's a small angle. This stroke and also this stroke, they form a specific angle. And if you measure the angle, this is the result. So for this one, the angle is like 47 degrees, and this one is 34. This is very small. And this one is 36, and this one is 53, and our is about 60. This is for k. But if you turn to k, so this is k. This is 61. This is about 57, and this is about 56, and so on. So you can see that for our akshara syllable, it has an angle about 60, quite similar to other k. But if you compare with this k, it is much smaller than 60. So it is more probable, quite likely, that we have a k here. So then the reading, liaquat can be, can be secured. And then let's turn to the content analysis. So according to Maozen, she believed that the first line, which I have shown you, he abandons the attachment to the world. If you compare, Maozen thinks that it is Jatakamara. And then the first line of the Tocharian fragment must correspond to the sixth verse in Jatakamala, where it is said that the Buddha abandons his attachment to the world. And then in the Tocharian fragment, line 3, it says that the Buddha entered the forest. And this thing was also mentioned in Jatakamala, but it is in 13th verse. So it is a huge gap between the there's a huge gap between these two things. But in the Tocharian fragment, we only just the first and the third line. So if you want to do, as I already mentioned, that there are a lot of different versions that differing in the details. So if you want to say that they belong to a specific version, and then you have to explain such a great discrepancy. This couldn't, Maozen couldn't provide any explanation for this. And then for the metrical parts, as you have seen, Zigling mentioned that believes that the verses in the fragment were in the meter 4 times 12, and then for this meter they have to assume in a single fragment 13 mistakes. So you can see that almost every line has a mistake. This is quite problematic. You can see. However, if the meter is this one, 12-1, 12-1, 18, 13, then we can get rid of all these problematic things. And then, according to this meter, this line has such a metrical structure. You can see that the word lyakeṃ and cesario actually belong to different colon. And lyakeṃ is very probably together with yopsa and this thick forest. And cesario, something like that, something other than the lyakeṃ. And I have shown you that leaving behind, so probably leaving his brothers, leaving his companies behind. So this is the meter, and then come to the etymology. So according to so actually this word liaquat is connected with the Indo-European word to lie down, and the new meaning liaquat, white place, can be connected with the Greek word called logos, ambush. But the original meaning of logos is actually the place suitable for ambush, and also a place who lies down for the ambush. And the liaquat can also be connected with other, like Old Irish for hiding place, and also the Welsh word for hiding place. And then let's come to a short morphological study. So the Greek, the Tocharian word liaquat is very likely a reo formation, and then and the Greek word logos is very likely a rho formation. This is quite obvious, I guess. And for the reo, we also have like Greek lechos means bed, and also the rho like leke bet in Tocharian bet. So how are these words connected and related to the semantic lie down? So actually, the rho formation has a passive or partientive meaning. Namely, we can see other examples like the word, the root for forget. You can have the morsel in Hittite and also in Avestan, it can mean vergessen, das Vergessen, forgetting, and also the forgotten things. So the passive meaning. And then for the root set, you have the Vedic word sadar, means the place where people sit. Yeah, from sit for the passive or the partientive meaning, a seat. Yeah, and it is exactly the same for the Liaquat. And another small thing, the word for bed and the word for white place or place for ambush are actually homogeneous with respect to their central signification, because they probably just have come from different contexts, to lie down indoors and to lie down outdoors. Yeah. And then we also have the passive meaning of rail in other languages. I do not want to say too much. And then another small thing. Sometimes the rail can have the same meaning of raw, because rail is liake and lehos, and the raw is tokaren, leke, and lake. And we have other evidence like the word Latin serum, and also the Greek word ohos, and so on. Yeah. And now let's come to the syntactic chaism. There's a phrase in Iliad. It's called lόχον diena, to go to the secluded spot of forest. And in Tocharian, we have the lyakeṃ yopsa. So these two phrases represent archaic construction, namely the accusative of direction and content directly with the verb to go, without any preposition. Yeah. And the Greek example you can see in Schweitzer, there are a lot of, and for the Vedic example you can see Gedic, and the Tocharian example you can see those. And very interestingly, this fragment is a very archaic one, according to the paleographical study, yeah, but also grammatically, and because in this fragment we also have the Tocharian dual, and also this construction, namely the go verb to just directly with the accusative, because in later Tocharian text, for such construction they usually use locative or some allative cases, not the accusative. So this speaks also for the archaic feature of this fragment. And then a small remark about the Greek verb, Greek phrase. And actually, if you check the edition by West, Van Thier, and Basel Commentar, they have this reading, namely lόχον de plus ihe, plus iené. But if you check Ludwig, it is lόχον plus and de and iené. And most interestingly, if you check the scholia to this line, it is actually ude lόχον iené. And I would suggest that first, the original phrase would be lόχον directly with iené, but this phrase is unmetrical in hexameter. So they just put a de after this lόχον. And for this addition of de to make it metrically suitable, we also have other examples. Very famous, the Zeus pater. Instead of Zeus pater, we have Zeus de pater. Yeah. And so therefore, in this Greek phrase, we have a archaic construction of the accusative direction with go, hey verb, and also in Tocharian. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So and lastly, and for this lόχos, we also have an interesting description. It is called seek ambush place, pυκινός lόχos. And in Tocharian, we also have this white place or this hiding place is also described like in the thick forest. And we also have lόχme pυκινē, the thick wild place, and which is the lair of the boar, And the Tocharian phrase describes the layer of the title. So this is basically everything. So thank you very much.
Great, we have 8.5 minutes for questions. Okay. Laura and Jose Luis.
Yes, I'm just a little bit skeptical about a couple of points, and I would like to invite you to think about them. Like, one is that the Tocharian is a sorry, I had to go out first, so probably missed that point. But is this a translation of a Sanskrit text?
It is, well, you could say that it is translated from the Sanskrit, but not a quite direct translation, because the Tocharian have their own innovations. Yeah, because well, the Buddhist texts have specific problems because they originally transmitted orally, so they have various different transmissions, and the Tocharian people at that time might have heard of or get to know of a specific Sanskrit version, and they just like made their own. Yeah. So, and the date could be like 5th century or as early as the end of 4th century AD. Yeah.
Okay, and so my skepticism then applies to um, the sort of phraseological. I don't have problems in making a phraseological uh, parallel, or because I mean, if this is correct, of course it's very nice, and
Yeah.
I would like that to be so. But I think it's very bold to. I don't know if this is your intent. I didn't really get it. Would you like to reconstruct something for Greek and Tocharian? Because this would be,
yeah.
I think, very bold, and I'm not sure about this. Or so, how far do you want to go with the reconstruction?
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
If
Yeah.
this is a translation from Sanskrit,
Yeah.
and we have Homeric Greek,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, that's also why the comparisons Tocharian,
Yeah.
other European languages for poetic patterns are so interesting.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. Well, I have to say that of course the Sanskrit. The Tocharian people have translated from the Sanskrit originals, yeah. But it does not mean that every sentence or every phrase was remodeled from the Sanskrit one. So actually, could be that in Sanskrit we have, well, the people entered somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Tocharian people just used the word for enter, and then this somewhere called hiding place or the secret place.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tocharian people know that, well, we have a word for hiding place, the word liaquat, and they just put it together to create a verse, to create a phrase. Yeah, and then we also we have in Greek also enter, go to some place. So the choice of the Tocharian people of this specific phrase, I mean, echoes with the Greek one. This is what I want to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
nice paper.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of points,
Yeah.
detailed points,
Yeah.
and an invitation to go further in a given line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, perhaps I would suggest to say, in the case of lyakeṃ, not to lie down, but intransitive and punctual, so momentative and telic.
Uh-huh.
So because actually lek has only root aorist,
Yeah.
and the present of this is the perfect, is kemai,
Yeah.
which is not perfect. It
Okay.
is a static verb, yeah.
Yeah.
And in this case, it is the act of getting in the earth, yeah.
Getting to.
Is a small point,
Yeah.
but what it would be interesting. If I surely do this, is in what context Tocharian form occur. The whiteness of the place, at least in the case of Greek, depends on the reference, not on the lexeme itself. So in fact, logos is the activity and the result of lying. The ambush is to be lying, waiting for the wild enemy. But the witness is not of the of the place. You know? You have also quoted said we have in Latin insidious and hedra. It depends. The ambush may be lying on the surface or sitting down somehow. This is the point that I can hardly see, at least in this presentation, that wildness is a part of logos in Greek. And the question is, what about Tocharian? What is the context and so on? You can get rid of these difficulties simply operating with a place one lies, more or less widely.
Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, the first one. I mean, the Tocharian phrase is constructed with the following two words, namely āttsāna. warśaiṃne is a word for forests, and āttsāna is a plural for seek. So it actually probably explains your first doubt. And then the Greek part. Well, I just have to admit that I'm no specialist for Greek. So actually, the basic meaning. I just rely my argument on the article by de Lamberterie. So according to him, that the original meaning of logos should be referring to place. I mean, of course, there's also a word. I can. This actually another word, logos, called childbirth. Childbirth, I think, is the euphemism saying of lying down. Childbirth.
In both cases, it is about the position of the person. Also, logos is a group of 20 or 25 young people who are going to the war and making a logos, in other words, putting themselves
lying down
the body. And in the case of a birth child, the woman she has born the child is the leho. It's Syrian. So in other words, it is about the position of the woman who brings the child, who gets the child.
Okay.
So this is no criticism against your point. Okay. The only point is that I have the impression that the thickness of the plants in Tocharian and so on here are not exactly connected with the lexeme of the verb. So I assume that for one,
the thickness of the forest.
In my life, I will not agree with Charles de Lamberterie.
Okay.
This is the fact is last.
Okay.
And the context.
Okay. Thank you.
We technically have 9 seconds, but if you're fast.
Very brief remark. If I remember correctly, Lamberterie actually says that this is not the root for to lie down, but there is another word in Greek, the adjective lyakeṃ in Homer, nesos te lyakeṃ, which is a thickly wooded forest island. Sorry. So if that's correct, you might question actually whether this is a word showing Indo-European upload. And I think Lamberterie, for this reason, doubts the etymology with logos. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I have to.
Is it borrowing?
Such a challenging title.
Yes. The final talk today is by somebody who needs no introduction. I'm hoping from the title that she's going to sing to us. Are you going to sing Handel to us? I don't know. Anyway, Ombra, my fool, or Hanging the Sun, Solar Myths, ritual, and language. Laura.
Well, thank you. This was a long day, and I've decided to close this after this very technical presentations about involving metrics, Tocharian, um, several other issues to lower the level and distract you a little bit with my talk. Okay, the title of my talk, as Joshua has already said, is a verse which appears in Handel's Xerxes, because as you probably know, Handel's Xerxes begins with the Persian sovereign worshipping a plane tree, and we can read it here. Frondi tenere e belle del mio platano amato, per voi risplende il fato, tuoni, lampi e procelle non voltraggino mai la carapace, né giunga a profanarvi austro rapace. And then we have the famous aria, Ombra mai fu. So, it's Handel. Okay, it's really, really interesting that that basically the first representation of this kind of worship appears in a Greek, at least to my knowledge, in Herodotus, and we find it in the seventh book of the Historia, which by this road. So Xerxes is going to Sardis, and we are before Xerxes is going to cross the Hellespont. So before he went to Sardis, and he found a plane tree to which, for its beauty, he gave adornment of gold and charged one of his immortals. The immortals are these guys who have to take care of things, so guardians basically, to guard it. And on the next day, they came chiefly to the state of Lydians. And we also find this very nice representation of Xerxes on a seal. You have seen this probably on my abstract, and this is something which looks like a plane tree or something like that. Now, how do we arrive to Handel? Greeks were, of course, horrified by such kind of worship. They were very polemic. See, for example, what ｉέναι in Varia Historia says, but this story about Xerxes and the plane tree was actually very popular and also preserved in other versions. We have another version in Plinius Naturalis Historia, in which the plane tree turns into an olive tree without any reason. So there is something going on there. Now, what I found really strange about this passage is that, okay, we can suppose that Greeks did not understand what Xerxes was doing, probably. But this is also contradictory with what Greeks tell about us, about Persian religion. And I'll refer again to Herodotus, who says that they do not actually worship tree, they worship the whole circuit of heaven, and they sacrifice also to sun, moon, earth, fire, water, and winds. And again, another information that Herodotus gives us is about the rites that Xerxes and his army perform before crossing the Hellespont. And he is quite clear about them. He says that these are rituals in honor for the sun. It's very clear here. At sunrise, he poured the libation, blah blah blah, praying to the sun that no accident might befall him. And Herodotus also says he does also other stuff, like scattering these branches somewhere. I'm not sure if this is also a solar rite, but the first one was. So Xerxes is worshipping the sun before crossing the Hellespont. My question for you would be, could this also be a solar cult? And in what follows, I'm gonna search for parallels for or things which resemble what we know about what Xerxes was doing. So association between sun and tree, or solar things and trees, solar and hanging, or golden objects hanging, or other and the like, and sun and swinging, because swinging is a complementary. When you hang something, it swings. So automatically, I don't. Maybe I didn't need to explain that. Okay. But anyway, okay, and in mythological and ritual traditions. So some of the parallels I will bring out will be maybe more convincing, other less, but well, we'll see. So I'll start from Saule's tree. For the Baltic evidence, some of you from my department already know I always use Chagall because um, he was not from Latvia, but I think that some iconographical patterns are really close, but this could be topic for another paper, maybe not in European paper. Well, in Latvian mythological songs, we find a close association between Saule, the sun god, the sun goddess, and trees. So, for example, Saule sleeps on a red tree, and also this tree is identified with different trees, which are um, some of them are oaks, lime trees, willow, hazel trees, birch, apple trees. Also, they are located mostly near water. So and Saule does different things. Usually, she can sit on trees, and also she waves objects. Sometimes she does it alone. Sometimes she does it with her daughter, which is called the girl of the sun, Saule's Meita. And well, I believe that the association between water and tree reflect the fact that this cosmological tree somehow was located close to a turning point of Saule's travel or to her nocturnal route. So this is a scheme that we find that some of you might have seen in the National Museum of Copenhagen, and it's how the travel of the sun has been reconstructed on the basis of the iconography of Danish razors from the late Bronze Age. So some of these patterns could apply also to what we read about Saule in the Latvian Dinas. She travels with a horse during the day. Then this travel is sometimes pictured as a sort of wedding. Then she could arrive to this tree, maybe, and then she changes her color. So she starts in white, she turns red, and then maybe she could even wake up on this tree. I don't know. Well, point is, if we look at these razors, we find also an interesting iconography, which is this one. You see it over there. This is, you see it here a little bit. Does it look a little bit like this, or is it only me seeing this? I mean, this shape, we don't know what this is, but I think it might look like a tree. And this is the sun travel. This might be the sun, maybe. And it's also, if we locate this tree as a turning point of the sun goddess travel, of course, we might think to the Hesperides. And of course, there is also a connection actually with the things which are woven and which support your etymology of Hesperis in Greek. So Hesperos. So and okay, now let's see what Saulis does. It's very common that in the Latvian Dinas she hangs object on this tree, and which are, for example, a belt or I don't know, a crown, or and these songs are usually associated with marriage, with weddings. So now, of course, I couldn't help to make this parallel with the Christmas tree, because in some local traditions, for example, my local Italian tradition, well, we know that of course Christmas is temporarily located on the winter solstice because this was probably a Mitraic celebration, so Sol Invictus. And this is nice because this is also the star of the Magoi. And I was telling that in my local tradition, you put the star on the top of the tree on Christmas Eve in order to signify that Christ is born. So there is an association between light and the birth and this hanging or putting an object on a tree. Now, this might be an hypothesis, but and this might be something close to what Xerxes is doing. Let's see if we can find some parallels, and I'll go now to Greece and focus on the figure of Erigone. Erigone, we know about two Erigonai in Greek. One is the daughter of Icarus, the man who welcomed Dionysus in Athens. The other one is thought to be the daughter of Aegisthus. Anyway, the two of them both die by hanging themselves, because they get upset or troubled by something they found out, and then they turn out hanging up themselves. And in one tradition, for example, Erigone herself finds her father with help of her domestic dog. This one, probably. And now, what can we do about the name of Erigone? Of course, the name Erigone is built with the same lexical material as Erigeneia, which means born in the morning, or the one having an early birth. And it's an epithet of the dawn goddess. Of course, avatars of the dawn goddess, as it is well known, also have a birth in the early morning. Take, for instance, St. Birgit, as pointed out by many authors, among whom we, of course, recall Campanile, who really stressed this aspect. Now, could Erigone possibly be an avatar of the dawn goddess? I don't know, but maybe. Let's see what we don't know many things about her, but we know that she was also called Aletis, and that she was associated with this Aletis Ode, which is commonly understood as a wandering ode, but we don't really know what it is. But as you see, the Aletis is the name of Ode. It's also a name of Erigone herself. And it's really interesting. This Ezekiel gloss, I really love Ezekiel's, because he says that Kai emeras onoma, so the name of a day or the name of the day. It could refer basically also to the day of the celebration of one festival in honor to Erigone, as we will see in a few minutes. The popular etymology, I've already said, connects it as it's the feminine of Aledes, but I would dare to propose an alternative connection with the term ale, worth eat, which is probably a Ionic word, and so interpret something like she of the eat. And I will provide a parallel for this kind of construction of name in a few minutes as well. Now, about the etymology, of course, ale is a Homeric term which means eve of the sun in the Odyssey, and it has been etymologized by my colleague Stefan Höfler as belonging to root swell. Then it would be, of course, Psilodic, but this wouldn't be so much problematic because it could be an Ionic word. On the other side, he also tried to connect it to the name of Helene, which is, of course, we have, several options for the name of Helene. I think you know about them. And your war. And another alternative for Ale and maybe Aledis could be another route which has been recently reconstructed by Nikolaev. This reconstruction is probably less problematic for Ale, and it connects it to other terms meaning burning, like rura, deliriously hot, Osadic arawin, to scorch with fire, and Old Irish loschai. Now, other possible female avatars who died by suicide are also associated possibly with brightness. One is Phaedra, who dies by hanging herself in Euripides. And I would like here to point out also a parallel with Helen Dendritis. According to Pausania, Ellen was pursued by some Rhodians women, and this is interesting, of course, because this is a local tradition of Rhodes, and Rhodes is the only island in Greeceland in which we have a actual solar cult. Also note that the name Hellene is homophonous with Helene the torch, and of course the sun is the torch of the sky. Now, about the festival in honor of Erigone, I'll try to be quick on this. It involved hanging. So women started, Erigone cursed Athenian women, and so they hanged themselves. Well, then they started emulating this hanging and swinging with swings, and we have trace of the ritual only in later literary sources, but actually we have also some base paintings of at least 5th century BCE. And skip this. The meaning of the ritual was maybe purification or celebration of youth, spring or rebirth, but there is also an interpretation by Festus who says that this could be something like meaning the disappearing of someone. The fact of swinging implies a disappearing, like if you swing very much, you might disappear at some point. I don't know, it's kind of dangerous actually. This is interesting because in South Slavonic, like in Old Bulgarian mythological song, we find that there is a girl named Grozdanka, in which Groz, which is derived by Groz, which means grave. And you remember Erigone was associated with Dionysus. And the Grozdanka is taken off by the sun god by means of a golden swing as well. And it's also interesting because she's also associated with burning. In another passage of the same song, Grozdanka puts a veil on another spouse of the sun, and the veil takes it's on fire. So now some ritual parallels. Now these are two Vedic passages which are quoted by Vedic commentaries to a Sanskrit and Vedic and Sanskrit ritual of the Mahabharata, in which the sun is described as the golden swing in the sky. And now this there was in Vedic in Sanskrit, in Old Indic, a ritual called the Mahabharata, which implied swinging, as pointed out also by von Schröder. And this is interesting because are some passages from the Shankayana Shautra Sutra and Aitareya Aranyaka, in which we find also in the Shankaya Aranyaka that putting his right side over the swing, he mothers do art the sun. So the swing is identified with the sun, and this match what we had in the other traditions. Also, the swinging it was well, we have this tradition also in Baltic as well. In Easter, there is the usage of building swings, and in this song, for example, says "Shine Saule" in the apple orchard. There is our big party, and have something like the swing hangs for you. And finally, a last ritual parallel that I would like to point you out in connection with the Easter ritual is I owe it to a personal communication by Milena Anfosso. It's the Naka in Davoli, and it's a ritual in which takes place actually on the Good Friday in close to Easter, in which trees are so. But the name Naka means cradle, but it implies the swinging of trees with hanging lampioni, which are torches actually, because also the original tradition was that these fir trees were lighted up. Then this was too dangerous, and they imitated this with some lights. So this might be some parallels that I've tried to identify, but yes, of course these are not exhaustive, so there might be several other ones. So my tentative conclusions for this presentation are that okay, Ombra my Fu, Xerxes, and the plane tree could be regarded as a sort of reflex of a solar cult, in which implied the hanging of objects. This solar cult, I would say, could take place in winter solstice, like the Mahabharata, or in closer to spring and summer, like these other rituals that we find here, the Ayora, the one for Erigone, the Easter spring songs in Baltic, and the Naka in Daboli. And about hanging the sun, I would propose that, well, the figure of Erigone in Greek might reflect this very theme. And with this, I close with this image of Copenhagen's swing in Tivoli, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. There's plenty of time for questions.
Thank you. This was fascinating. I came to think of an example which you didn't discuss. Perhaps it's familiar to you, but and it concerns the descriptions that we have in Adam of Grinnell, the descriptions of the sacrificial celebrations in Uppsala.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he wasn't there himself, but he spoke to people who had been there. And his description, his description has it's an interesting mixture between rhetoric, eyewitness descriptions that he processes somehow, but he describes these feasts, and there are certain details suggesting that the trees in which sacrificial victims are hung, and always 9 of them, 9 animals of different kinds, and even people. There are some details in the description of a tree which is green for the whole year or something like that. That has others have come up with the idea that this seems to be some possible cosmological or mythological reference that somehow went into his description. It's very unclear what he might describe, but this could be perhaps an interesting opening for you that these celebrations, calendaric rituals in which a tree has an important role, but also sacrifice, animal sacrifices that hung in trees, possibly not whole animals, but parts of them.
Yes, thank you. And also, I think that another, well, it's a possible parallel. I think also, when, can I ask you, sorry if I ask a question to you guys, when does this ritual take place? Because this is,
no, it's every 9th year.
Okay.
It says every 9th
every
year.
9th year. Okay.
I'm not sure if I can remember the details, but I think it doesn't take place very often. But people come from every part of, from areas far away as well to celebrate these. But possibly someone here knows more about the details.
Well, the association with number 9 is of course fascinating because I mean.
But of course we have other texts suggesting that sacrifices were celebrated at winter solstice.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, in the
I think it's a possible parallel. I should look a little bit into that because I don't know this precise text. I know that several other parallels for Erigone and for the swing and for the Mahabharata are being proposed. For instance, a standard connection which has been done is with the maple, because there is also this sort of ritual in which you go around and you're connected to the maple tree with a sort of I don't know how to call it, a cord or something like, yeah, a rope. Yeah. So and this could vaguely recall something like a tree with hanging things. Well, I think there are many possible connections that I just chose some. But thank you for the parallel. It's really interesting for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. It was very fascinating, and I believe everything you said, but I have doubts about the seal
Hmm.
because I'm not an Indo-Europeanist, unlike most people in this room. And as an Orientalist, as I saw it, I saw a Neo-Assyrian way of life. That's exactly what I saw. That has very deep Syro-Mesopotamian roots and looks like something that the Persians would have taken from a local tradition. Now, it's very likely that they might have used a representation that was local to represent something that belonged to their original culture or Indo-European forefathers. But it really looks like a mix of elements that were iconographically and culturally entirely different from Indo-European to me. So and I was curious, and here comes the question: where is it? Because I googled it and I only find the drawing.
Yeah.
Is it somewhere? The seal? Because I didn't know it.
Okay. First of all, on your remark, I haven't read it, but it's written on the slide that, of course, as you have seen, this spiral with but also Mesopotamian iconography is, of course, there, and it has long been noticed. And I mean, I don't want to deny that, and it's what is usually said about this, and it could be, of course, a mix of elements, but still, I mean, it's in Persian. Now, about I've been struggling myself because when I wanted to use this image, and of course, I couldn't find a real picture. I think that the first person who has, I don't know where it was located. I think it was, but I can give you some references which can be more precise than me on this. And the first one who has this drawing is, I think, Menon in the late 19th century.
Okay.
And I think this was on a sort of cylinder.
Yeah,
And
of
I
course,
think it
that's
was
Windows.
in somewhere in Belgium, but
Oh, okay.
I'm not really sure, and I don't know why we do not have a picture of the
That's weird.
object. I
It's
was
very
also
unusual.
very
It's a very unusual iconography. I mean, the tree is a typical Mesopotamian iconography. The sun is a typical Mesopotamian sun, but you don't find the tree and the sun in that position.
yeah.
So there might be something going on there. It would be worth finding.
Yeah,
You know,
yes,
and
yes. I
taking a
think
picture.
so. But yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know why we don't have a photo of this object. It might be. It might even be that it web. I don't want to be too pessimistic. It could be stolen, broken. I don't know. I had a similar case with a Greek vase a few years ago, and we don't know what happened with that. So I don't know if it is just inaccessible or if. Yeah, you're welcome.
I wondered about Erigone's father. You said it was called Karios.
Yes.
Does that have any interesting etymology?
I don't know.
I just in case you knew it.
I don't have a solution about this. I'm sorry. It's a very frustrating topic. Also, we don't know so much about this character, and we know, I don't know if you know this, but they were also only kind of late literary sources, and classic classical age basis, so it's a little bit difficult to reconstruct the myth. It's just he is associated with Dionysus. I don't know, but I don't know about the etymology. I don't have etymology for that. Sorry.
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
It's curious to me that you didn't say anything about another mythological notion of the sun that comes up there, namely the vessel of the sun and ocean. So you have this passage in Herodotus 754 in which Xerxes pours from a fiale, and then he throws something which is magically turned into a crater onto the ocean. And we're talking about the sun. Now, you know, there's plenty of evidence that the sun sits in one of these things in Greece and Anatolia and then crosses the ocean. But the ocean is, of course, circular. So then there's no problem because you then end up in the morning with the sun on the other side. But if you have a swing, your sun sits there and presumably it has to come back. And I actually don't understand how these two things would fit together. The genius of ocean is that you can in fact have the sun go around. The weirdness of having a mythology in which your sun is here and then swings here, then presumably physics means it swings back.
Yeah.
But then you have to watch it do that. So I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Somehow these two traditions have to intersect, but I don't totally get it.
Yeah. I don't like. I'm aware of like this parallel that you provide from Herodotus and this, which is I think that this object or something similar that we find in Greek tradition is sometimes described as a depas.
Yes,
so the famous depas, and of course this is nice because all these things that we see on this slide are boats. Yes, sort of boats or cups, and also we have manufacts which are cups with the sun inside. You can see the National Museum of tonight. Well, once I say that, I don't know if this. I don't know how consistent this cosmological travel or movement of the sun is, how consistently this is imagined. I wouldn't. Sometimes we find contradict. Like I like this to build a consistent system, but I'm not sure that we could, but that we could do that on the basis of the swinging and this object. Maybe yes, if we imagine that this is like a cradle swinging or something like that, this could be somehow comparable to the object, but I don't know about the movement. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry. Also. Yeah.
No. Well, technically right, but okay. Ricardo gets the last question because look, it's Laura, so we have to allow it. One more.
Just a quick remark. There's this myth in Vedic about the gods fearing the falling down of the sun, and the way they got secure the sun is with a string or more strings. So,
yes.
I think this could be connected to your reconstruction. It would fit, and so.
Yeah, but it would fit really well. It would fit really well.
Professor Jamison actually wrote.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the sun is setting, and the day is more or less over. Let's thank Laura for ending it.
Forever.
I don't know. I think